Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today is Brutus Monroe Blog Hop Day, and we were challenged with decorative details. So I'm going to try something a little bit different today using the die of the month. So let's go ahead and get started with what we're making. I have some charcoal glitter stock from Brutus Monroe, and I'm going to use the stencil, or not the stencil, the die of the month, and I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine. So check your machine. I have to use a metal shim. Your die cutting machine may work a little bit differently, but for me, the metal shim definitely worked. So once that was run through, it was easy peasy to pull that out, because there's a lot of detail on this die, just a ton of detail. And so that's why I have to use the metal shim, otherwise it's just not going to come out. And then once I have that out, I'm going to use the die brush and foam by CassieT. And then I'm going to just run that over the top to get all those die pieces out. This just makes it so much easier. So I'm showing you how that works, and it works so quickly that I'm going to take it and do it over my trash can to get the excess pieces out. But take a look at how beautiful this die is. It's just so gorgeous and delicate and intricate. And I just saw a pattern in there, so I thought I was going to cut around that pattern, and this was going to be my decorative detail. So just look at some of the dies that you have. I think that's one of the reasons I like the Brutus Monroe dies so much, is they're all gorgeous and you can just find different ways to use them. I also like that if you see just using the die, it covers the entire front of an A2 size card, which is typically what I make. But this is just another fun way to use some of those dies. Take a look at them and you might be surprised at some of the detail that you can get out of them just by kind of trimming them up. Alright, so now that we are about finished cutting that out, take a look at what you're left with. I think that's so pretty. It was kind of a happy accident to find that. And I'm drinking some hot cocoa, and I'm sure you could read on the side of my mug, World's Okayest Mom. I love my kids. They definitely have a sense of humor. My son actually told me, Mom, it's kind of unrealistic to think that you could be the world's best mom. There are so many moms out there. So I think saying the world's okayest is probably a safe bet. So love my kids, great sense of humor, and you know what? Their logic isn't wrong. All right, so let's move on to the stamping. I just have a scrap of Express It cardstock that I've stuck into my Mini Misty. I'm inking up these pumpkins from the Trick or Treat set with some Brutus Monroe Raven detail ink, and I am stamping those down. I'm going to do it one more time to make sure that all my lines are nice and crisp. I love the detail of these stamps. Makes the shading and coloring super, super easy. And before I get started doing that coloring, I am going to take my heat tool to these. So that's one of the things about the Brutus Monroe ink, is that it can smudge if you don't let it dry. So I like to take a heat tool over mine just to make sure that I'm getting those good and dry before I start doing any coloring. I've picked out 3 orange colors, and they're all a little bit non-traditional. They wouldn't necessarily, if you're just looking at your colors, you wouldn't be able to think, oh, these are great, these will go together. I'm starting off with an E97. I'm going to color all of my images with that base for starters, because I thought I didn't want to go with bright orange. I thought that this would be a nice orange to go with. And then my next color is YR18. So yes, you look at those colors and you think, all right, the numbers don't go together, they don't match. But when you start to layer them, they look pretty good together. And then I even go a step further after this, because I thought maybe I'd only do 2 layer, but I decide to grab a 3rd layer here in a second, and that one even is another color that you're like, all right, wouldn't have seen that until I actually went over the top of it, which was E07. So layering these up gives a good dramatic cover. I end up trying to take the YR18 and go over the inside of the pumpkin a little bit, and it ended up being way too dark. I don't know what I was thinking. I probably should have gone with something a little lighter. So for the other 2, I do grab a yellow, but I'm not really happy with how that ended up being so dark on that part. Stepping away from the coloring for just a second, I do want to just do a giant thank you to everybody who has left all kinds of love. My last video, I talked about how our cat Nick had passed away this last week and how tough it was, and so I did a little tribute video, and believe it or not, that actually helped quite a lot to be able to do that. But what helped so much more was all the love that I got from y'all, and I just want to to point out how amazing our crafting community is and how much I appreciate all of y'all. I've read all the notes and everything, and my heart goes out to a lot of you because a lot of you lost pets, and so I feel your pain. You know my pain, and anyway, y'all just keep being amazing because that's exactly what you are. All right, back to the coloring. We're just doing the same thing we did on the last pumpkin. We will keep coloring and drawing that out. If you notice, I do a lot of flicking motions when I am coloring. I like to do the flicking because it ends up making those ends quite a bit lighter, so that when you're blending, it ends up being so much easier to actually blend those colors out. I love my Arteza markers, but to blend those, it doesn't have a brush tip, so it's hard to flick those. That's one of the reasons I like the Copic so much, is because I can really work on my blending in this way. So if you notice, I'm just doing a lot of flicking. And I also go lightest to darkest. I have always done that. I've tried doing the other way, and I know for a lot of people that just, going darkest to lightest works just fine for them. I'm just not one of those that has that kind of luck with it. So I've just stuck with what I do know, which is lightest to darkest. And then I go back over it again, just dragging that color out, flicking just to give it a lighter, blend. And then I'll finish up by using that Y35 on the insides. All right, then I'm going to go and fussy cut all of these images out, which are super easy to fussy cut because they're just simple, almost a circle with a stem on it. So I didn't mind fussy cutting these at all. It probably took me like 2 minutes to do. And now I'm going to move on to doing my background. I'm going to start off showing you, I always speed my videos up like just double, but I'm going to speed this one up 4 times here in a second. I'm starting off with some squeezed lemonade in the center. And I don't know why I didn't use my waffle flower media mat, because honestly, that mat is incredible for kind of gripping your paper. And that way you don't have such a, it doesn't slip around all over the place like this is doing. And another thing that I should have done was maybe use like a Post-it tape or something like that over my fingers so that I didn't smudge the ink and then get my fingers all covered in ink. Honestly, I was being lazy. My laziness didn't end up helping me out at all. In fact, it ended up adding more work to my plate. So I went from squeezed lemonade to twisted citron to crushed olive, and now I'm doing a little bit of black soot around the edges. And you'll notice that I get my fingers in different places. So like I said, my laziness didn't help me out at all. It didn't save me any time. In fact, it added time to what I was doing. But that's okay. I just kept going back and forth just, until I got the coverage that I wanted. And now we're back to just double speed. And I did do this on my glass mat, and I do like doing it on my glass mat, only for the reason that it's so simple to clean up. I'm spritzing a little bit of water over the top because these are Distress Oxide inks. They will react with the water. So I let that sit for probably a minute, then I wipe it up. And then I'm also grabbing this Pewter Sheer Shimmer Spritz by Tsukineko, and I just pulled it out and then flicked it all over the back and then waited for that to dry. I am going to use a sentiment from the Brutus Monroe Simon Says Stamp collaboration. So this stamp set is only available through STAMPtember until it's no longer available. So if it sells out, it's gone. It's never coming back. So if you haven't gotten your hands on that yet, as of filming, I think it's still available. So I will link to that down below as well. So I stamped out the sentiment Happy Halloween onto my panel, forgetting that this is Distress Oxide and it isn't going to show up very well. So you can tell it's kind of subdued there. That's why I stamped it again on some white cardstock. I trimmed that down to a strip, then I cut off the edge just a little to give some, just to give it something different. I put some foam tape on the back of my sentiment, then I'm sticking that down to some of the charcoal Glitterstock, and then I'll trim that down some more, and I'll eventually just go ahead and glue that right down to the front of my card. I'm gluing my card panel down to some Raven cardstock card base. So I had this trimmed down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches and scored it at 5 1/2 inches. So it's a top folding A2 size card. And then I'm going to start adhering my little decorative elements. So again, this is from that stencil. And I don't put glue all over. I do put it all around the edge because I want to make sure that that edge stays down. And I did use a glue that would be a little bit, take a little longer to dry. That's sometimes there are glues out there that dry very, very quickly. So I chose a glue that I knew would take a little bit longer to dry so that I could actually put it on some of those edges that I knew might have a problem poking up. So then once I have that down, I'll flip it over and I'll trim off the excess. And then I'm going to start adhering my pumpkins to the front. I'm going to use some glue to adhere that last pumpkin to make him look like he's, or that back pumpkin to make him look like he's in the background. And then I'm going to put foam tape on the front two pumpkins, and then I'll stick those down just to make them have a little bit of dimension and look like they are in the forefront before that one pumpkin. I'm not done yet. I do decide I want to do something on the inside because this was a black card base. You could leave it as is and then just use like a white gel pen or a silver or a gold gel pen to write on the inside, but I decided I just would cut down some white cardstock to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and then I'm going to stamp out some of the elements from this Trick or Treat stamp set. I'll stamp those on the inside, and then I'm going to grab the bats as well, and I'll use some of that black soot on those bats. Just a few of them. I'm really enjoying doing up the insides of my cards. And then I'll glue that down using that same liquid glue. And then that is going to finish off this card. So if you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe so that you don't miss anything. And head back to my blog so that you can take a look at what the rest of the team did with this decorative challenge. So head back there, check it all out, see what's been going on. And as always, guys, thank you so much for stopping by.